Hello, crypto world! Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. This is going to be an XRP video. In this video, I want to talk about a window of opportunity for a move up that I believe exists for XRP as well as crypto at large. Now, I've been talking about this window of opportunity in some of my more recent videos. I want to show you how things have been progressing and show you why I believe that what is potentially going to play out, it's likely going to be a fast thing. So let's bring this chart to life. Okay, so bam, boxes and fractals. That's what I do. So XRP, I know I've spoken about this many times, but XRP has a repetitive structure that plays out in its bull runs. So there are essentially three main corrective structures within the greater XRP bull run. We have the first one here. We have the second one here. The second one has two parts to it. This one's small. This one's large. That's typical. And then you have the third corrective structure. Normally, it goes to the peak. There's 7 moves. You can zoom in on an hour candle and count 7 moves. That brings it to a peak. We have 7 moves. Now, for the sake of this video, at least part of the video, I'm going to assume that this is not the peak. I'm going to show you another fractal just to present a balanced analysis so you are aware of both possibilities. So this is a bullish fractal. So if you took this structure within the second corrective structure box, basically it's this and the move up to right here. So if you take that, stretch it, you can see that it is a decent match. Now, I've shown you this fractal in the past, and for a while it was a good match, and then it kind of looked like it was breaking. But as this chart has continued to evolve, we can see that it is a decent match. So if this is at play really soon, anytime soon, we should expect a move up. This move up is going to be fast, furious. The hope would be that it makes a new all-time high, which I think there is a very good chance of that happening. Now, let me show you the bigger picture, because really it's the environment that we are in that dictates what XRP will do. XRP is not going to defy the entire market. It lives within the greater market, and if the greater market presents the opportunity for it to move up, it will. So let's examine the bigger picture. Okay, so I just recently put out a video on the Nasdaq. You can watch that video over here. In that video, I show you a repetitive macro structure that's at play on the Nasdaq. I also talk about how I believe there's a good chance that it moves up. This is really good because XRP and crypto at large follows the Nasdaq. This box is, of course, from December 2018 to March 2020, and it essentially is the run-up and crash that took place during C19. So this fractal comes from this box. It's just stretched out and enlarged to match the timing height and depth that comes after this box. So the blue fractal that you see at the end is essentially the very peak that comes from this box. I just matched it to the nuances of the move up that's taking place on the chart today. Let's zoom in on it. Okay, so here we are. Instead of a 3-day candle, we're on a 3-hour candle. And as you can see, it is following the rough idea of this blue fractal, which is essentially this black fractal right here. So if this continues to play out, we potentially have a continued move up to a peak. As you can see, folks, this is not something that just lasts months and months and months. It's a short window of time. As I pointed out before, XRP follows the Nasdaq. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so XRP is on the bottom here. As you see, it moves up aggressively just kind of right when the Nasdaq is entering this peak structure. Once the Nasdaq enters this peak structure, well, lo and behold, XRP kind of goes into the topping part of this move up. So if, knock on wood, that this continues to move up, I think there's a good possibility, of course it's speculation at this point, that XRP will once again shoot up and potentially make a new all-time high, as the Nasdaq also potentially makes a new all-time high. Notice how when XRP moves up, it's right before the Nasdaq enters its peak structure right here. Well, we potentially have something very similar playing out again. It's going to be a short window of time, folks. So I just want to let you know that this is not going to be months and months and months. Whatever XRP does, it's going to need to do it within this window, because once the Nasdaq starts falling, we should not expect for XRP to continue to move up. Okay, so that's the Nasdaq. Now we're going to look at the Dow Jones. Okay, so I'm back on a 3-day candle, and this is essentially just rinse and repeat. This is the Dow Jones. This box is the same time frame, December 2018 to March 2020. The run-up and then the crash that takes place during C19, we take that structure, stretch it out to match the timing, height, and depth on this part of the chart, and boom, this is what we get. This black fractal is the peak structure right here, this little tiny move up to the peak. So let's zoom in onto this structure. Okay, so once again, I'm no longer on the 3-day candle. I'm now on a 3-hour candle, and as you can see, it is following the basic pattern that this black fractal suggests. So once again, this is just a window. Now, this may not actually get above the current all-time high. Maybe it will. This move up, maybe it'll be different from what this fractal suggests. That's always a possibility. But there is a good chance that it doesn't make a new all-time high. Nonetheless, this is the window. Once the Dow starts falling, we should not expect crypto to continue moving up. Crypto will follow what these larger indexes are doing. Let's look at the S&P 500. Okay, so once again, the same structure. December 2018 to March 2020. The crash is the C19 crash. We take that structure, match it to the timing, height, and depth that comes after this box, and this is what we get. The blue fractal is essentially the same thing. It's this little tiny peak right here. So let's zoom in onto this structure. Okay, so as you can see, the blue fractal is that peak structure. We see that it is following the basic pattern that this blue fractal suggests. It may continue to move up and potentially make a new all-time high. Again, small little window, not something that's just going to keep going up and up and up. This is really important, folks. What I want to do now is I want to compare XRP to the S&P 500 because a lot of analysts use the S&P 500 as a guide for crypto. Okay, so this is XRP on the bottom, and on the top is the S&P 500. And just as I pointed out with the Nasdaq, the S&P's moving up right before it, or as soon as it enters its peak structure. What does XRP do? It wakes up and just shoots up, and then once the S&P 500 enters its peak structure, well, what does XRP do? It kind of does a peak structure. So we are in sync with the S&P 500. As the S&P 500 declines, well, what do you know? So does XRP. Now the S&P 500 is moving up, and what do you know? So is XRP. No wonder why analysts use this as a guide. So what can we see about the S&P 500? We see a window. It's just a amount of time. I don't know what this exact amount of time will end up being, but it's not very big. It could potentially make a new all-time high. So just as XRP moved up right as the S&P 500 was entering into this peak structure, we could see something similar to that again. As the S&P 500 enters this peak structure, really, which is at any moment, XRP could wake up and shoot up once again. Now, again, it's not going to be a large amount of time. It's a very short window. All right, let's look at the Russell 2000. Okay, so this is the Russell 2000, and just like all the other indexes, you take December 2018 to March 2020, which is the run-up to the C19 crash, and just take this structure, stretch it out to match the timing, height, and depth on this side of the chart. And by the way, the timing, height, and depth when a fractal repeats does not repeat. That's always going to be unique to the new iteration. So even though the pattern repeats, which we see here, the timing, height, and depth doesn't. This allows for fractals to play out on a small scale or a larger scale, or parts of a structure to play out larger than what the fractal suggested or smaller. So as you can see, this blue fractal, now, by the way, if you're wondering, whoa, this is going to go to negative, no. I just grabbed this entire decline and matched it to meet this. This is not what, don't look at this number and say, oh my gosh, it's going to go to that. That's not accurate. Let's zoom in and take a look at this. All right, so here we are zoomed in, and once again, this blue fractal is this structure right here. So as you can see, it is following the basic idea. Some parts are much larger. Remember, I was telling you parts of a structure can play out larger than others. This aggressive move up on the fractal is really this. So on today's chart, it was not so intense. But you can see that it is following the basic idea. So for those of you who have high hopes for the Russell and believe that the Russell must get into all-time highs for XRP to do well, look at this. You be the judge. If this continues to follow this basic idea, the Russell might be peaking out. Now, maybe it will deviate from this or break from this fractal, or even just do it for a small amount of time and move up higher, but we should be aware that the Russell 2000 may be finding its peak right now. Now, if the other indexes haven't yet, I don't know if the Russell would buck the tide and start falling. Maybe it's a possibility, or maybe it may continue to go flat, or, like I said, break from this fractal at least temporarily and also move up. So there is a little bit of a contradiction here. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. But anyways, regardless, it is not going to likely continue to move up and up and up and up. It may already be peaking. Maybe there is a little extra room. We don't know. We'll find out how this plays out. Let's jump back to XRP. So now that we see this fractal, it begins to make sense. A quick move up to a peak. I don't know where this peak will be, but what I do know is that as of now, the indexes show that at best we have a small window of time for crypto to do well. I'm going to show you another fractal that you guys should be aware of. So for those of you who follow my channel, you know I have been showing this fractal in recent XRP videos. This is the bull run peak of the 2021 bull run structure. As you can see, it is following it. So here's the thing. We are actually at a crucial point. Yes, it's moving down right now, but both bearish and bullish fractals show a move up. Here's the clincher. If XRP begins to move up and it does not get above this current all-time high, then most likely we are continuing to follow this structure. If we are, there is a good chance that this was the peak. Remember, we've had 7 moves on a small time frame. That's what it does after it gets above the high of the third corrective structure. It goes 7 moves to the peak. Now, let's balance that out with everything I just showed you. I think there's a good possibility that this move up could potentially end up creating a new all-time high. Let's show that other fractal. So as you can see, they're both very similar to each other. It's this point that tells the story. So we are, I believe, if it continues to follow this, very near this part of the structure. We will know very soon what XRP is doing. If it doesn't make a new all-time high at this point and it continues to follow this structure, folks, the writing is on the wall. This is a peak structure. We don't want it to do that. We really need it to make an all-time high at this point. We need to break away from this structure. I think if it does make a new all-time high, it may reset this entire structure back to the beginning. So we would be doing something like this red structure again from the peak, wherever that is. By the way, if you take this third corrective structure, it also hints at something like this blue fractal. Let me show you. Okay, so here it is. So for a while, it was matching quite well, and then it wasn't matching very well. This is how I have it aligned. I believe it's playing out like this. I think that this large pullback could just be the same thing that this fractal suggests right here, just playing out on a larger scale. We'll have to see. If it is doing something similar to this, again, this is another fractal that points to a new all-time high. Okay, so I want to show you one last chart as a bonus. Okay, so this is Bitcoin, and for those of you who have been following my recent videos, I've been talking about this fractal. This is the move up to the peak. As you can see, whew, this thing is just on track. I mean, it's a close follow. In my video I made about the Nasdaq, I threw out the possibility that this could potentially start moving up at an angle. I still think that is possible as Bitcoin follows the Nasdaq. So if the Nasdaq is going to move up, I think there's a good chance, and the S&P, I think there's a good chance that something similar to this could potentially be at play, but it could play out at an angle, making this move up even higher, potentially. I don't know. Well, this is speculation, potentially higher than this peak. But once again, this points back to a window. This is the peak structure that Bitcoin did back in 2021. After this comes a decline. All these charts are in unison. Okay, I said this is the last one, but I think you'll want to see this other chart. I'll make it quick. Okay, so this is the Bitcoin dominance chart. I believe this chart has a repetitive macro structure. There are essentially 4 different boxes that repeat over and over again. We are in box 2. So this fractal in box 2 comes from the original box 2. As you can see, it's followed the basic idea. Now, for a while, I thought we were already starting the decline, but as it's played out, it's become clear that the decline has not started. So we're still in box 2. Box 3 is a decline. Now, if you take this circled area of the fractal and just adjust the angle to match what the chart is doing, let's zoom in and take a closer look. Okay, so here we are zoomed in, so we could see a better image of this chart and the fractal. As you can see, it clearly looks like it's following the rough outline of this fractal. It also appears that we are at or near the completion of this structure. So what would come after this? The decline. Now, the decline that we're going to go into is in box 3. There's several different iterations of it. Here is the most recent one. Here is the original one. It could be either of these, or most likely a unique iteration, but one that could harken back to either this one or this one. So this is exciting news. We are potentially very near the beginning of this decline. And what that means is that money flows out of Bitcoin and into altcoins. This is what happens during alt season. So that's something to keep an eye on. Let's jump back to XRP. Okay, so here we are back at XRP. I have the 2 key fractals, at least at this point in time. Let's hope that it follows the blue one. I think there's a good chance it will. Anyways, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up button. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. But if you did enjoy this video and you'd like to see more, I recommend hitting that subscribe button. I'll continue to follow up on this chart as it continues to develop. By the way, if you want to stay in touch with me, I have a Discord. It's connected to my Patreon, and I'll put a link to my Patreon in the description of this video. It's a $5 a month subscription. I'm active on there. You're welcome to join. There's also a lot of other good analysts on there, and you can be part of the conversation. Well, I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.